Welcome to the Simplified Dentistry podcast. Join us as we discuss clinical, operational, and financial aspects of your practice, help you enjoy life, and dare to simplify dentistry.
We want to welcome today's guest, Kirk Teachout. Kirk is a best-selling author, podcast host of Management Unfiltered with Zach Shelley, and a dental business coach known for helping practices grow in new and creative ways. Drawing from his background as an artist, music producer, and manager of artists featured on American Idol and The Voice, Kirk brings out-of-the-box thinking to dentistry. Through his latest venture, Seven-Figure Dentist, he combines creative strategies with proven business systems that have allowed practices to grow to seven figures and operate in only 3 days. We'd like to thank our sponsor, NSK Dental. Founded in 1930, NSK is the world's largest manufacturer of rotary instruments for the dental professional, which includes air-driven and electric handpieces, specialty handpieces, electric motors, and hygiene maintenance systems. NSK is passionate about creating innovative products that deliver outstanding service and value. Almost all parts are manufactured in-house to guarantee the highest precision, reliability, and performance. NSK is the only handpiece that I've ever used in my office. Please visit nskdental.com for more information. Welcome back to the Simplified Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Mustafa Khan, and I'm your host today. Today we have Kirk Teachout from the Seven-Figure Dentist with us. Really glad to have Kirk with us on the first episode of the new season of 2026. Kirk, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're the star of the season so far.
That's fine.
Before we get into it, I do want to thank a couple of our sponsors. I'm a in the trenches dentist, so kind of two things that I work with every day are handpieces, and I'm a crown and bridge kind of guy, so a lot of restorative materials. So Kettenbach USA is kind of a company that I use their Vicious core almost every day. And NSK, in my opinion, is the finest handpiece company there is. I use the Z series, the Z95, Z99Ls every day, and they're great. So, encourage everybody who's listening to take a look at those things. So let's get to it. Kirk, Seven-Figure Dentist. Philosophy is built on the pillars of high efficiency systems, team empowerment, and the radical idea that a thriving dental practice can operate at peak profitability in 3 days. I think we all want to operate in 3 days. Most dentists think that working less means producing less. How do you guide a dentist into getting into maximum efficiency in 3 days?
So I was just talking with somebody about that. We had this snowstorm go through, right? So we're in Memphis, Tennessee. Sure. So we were shut down for almost 2 weeks here. Because we have one snow plow for the whole county. So we're anything like that, it's like we can't do anything. But ironically, somebody in Charlotte, they were closed on a Monday, 2 weeks in a row. So 2 Mondays in a row. And I was like, that's perfect, because that's the analogy I use when it snows on a Monday. Where do you have to put those patients? You have to get them rescheduled. And most of the time you fit them in throughout the rest of the week. And if you're able to do it once, why can't you do it again and again and again? So that's all it is you get really creative on where to put people throughout the rest of the week, every single week. And then you just refine it over and over again. Because I would argue that most people feel like they're busy, but they're really not truly as productive as what they could be.
Sure.
On 4 days a week, 5 days a week, or whatever, because I've taken several people now from 4 or 5 days a week down to 3. And it's not that difficult once you break it down the way that I do.
So if you're cutting a doctor's hours by 30%, 40%, and not trying to drop any revenue, kind of what's the very first operational bottleneck that you think needs to be unclogged?
The schedule.
And
the organization of the schedule. Yeah. So
if you gave me a bit of advice that, hey, Dr. Khan, let's get you down to 3 days, this is the first thing you got to think about.
Yeah. So one, we got to figure out where you want to go. So everybody has bells and whistles, coaches and consultants, and that's cool. And we know which levers to pull, but at the end of the day, you've got to know that whatever levers we pull is going to give you the outcome that you want. We've got to figure out where you want to go. Let's just say for easy numbers, right? $1 million practice. Okay. We've got to be able to break that down. Let's say you work 4 days a week. We've got to be able to break that down to the amount of weeks you work. Let's say you want to take 5 weeks off this year, and that, that's what you want to do. You've got X amount of days to be able to do that. So we divide it, the amount, the $1 million, by the days that you're going to work, which leaves us typically around $6,250, $7,500, depending on what you're doing
per day.
UCR fees. Yeah. So really, let's just, again, for easy numbers, if you have to collect $6,250 with insurance, maybe $7,500 is your number, right? With adjustments.
Sure.
That you have to produce, not collect, produce to get there. So then you got to see, like, how many hygienists do you have?
I have 2.
Okay, great. Us too, right? And I want our hygienists on a simple day to be able to produce $1,500 each. So that's $3,000 off of that $7,500 that we're looking at, right? So all you have to produce now is $4,500 a day. Do you think you could do that?
Sure. All day long.
Yeah. Right. All day long. That's a couple crowns and a handful of fillings, right? It's like nothing crazy.
I hope it's less than that.
Right. It is. But still, let's just say a crown and a bunch of fillings, right?
Sure.
Very simple, that you can hit those numbers and it's going to get you the outcome that you want. But we've got to get the schedule lined up to where it makes sense for that to work properly. Because it's one thing to be able to hit our goals. It's another thing to have less chaos during the day to actually hit those goals. So what I do is I typically, even if you have 2 chairs or 3 chairs, I break every doctor up in 3 columns, regardless of if you have the chairs or not, because you can still do it with a 3rd column even if you have 2 chairs. So we have, a lot of people call them rock, sand, water, whatever you want to call it, but your high production procedures. You have 1 column that's just high production, and we fill that up first. So that's your crowns, that's your bridges, that's your implants, if you want to do that. Then we have a 2nd column that's going to be the fill in the gaps, right? So that's going to be your smaller procedures, such as your fillings and your extractions. So that's how you stagger them to where the doctor time makes sense. Then finally, your 3rd column, regardless of if you have a chair for it or not, is your assistant-driven procedures. So those are your clear aligner checks, those are your emergency visits, those are your adjustments, your partial seats, like anything like that. That the doctor time is super minimal. And it's mainly just the assistant going in, taking the x-ray, doing whatever they have to do, and then you come in, pop in, yeah, everything looks good, let me do this adjustment, and then you walk out. So when you have this kind of flow and this dance through the schedule, it's fairly simple to go through. Let's say a crown at 8 o'clock, right? You have a crown and a clear aligner check at the same time. 2 assistants, they're going to seat those patients. You're going to numb the crown, and I'm going to stagger a filling appointment 30 minutes after at 8:30. So you numb the crown, you do the clear aligner check. By the time you're done with the aligner check, you go over, prep the crown in 20 minutes. And now your other assistant that was with the clear aligner check seats the filling patient that's 30 minutes staggered. So then you're done with your doctor time over in the crown, appointment, and you go over and do what? You numb the filling patient. But you don't stay there. You go over and do your hygiene checks, which shouldn't take more than 5 minutes each. And if they do, then we can talk about streamlining some efficiencies there, to where your team is doing the bulk of the education there, not you, and you're just diagnosing and confirming. And then you come back and guess what? Your filling patient is ready to drill and fill.
Sure.
Right? That first hour and a half right there is a $2,500 hour. So all you have to do now is duplicate it throughout the day. And even with PPO, with a heavy PPO schedule, you're still looking at $17,500 an hour, $17,50 an hour, which is over $12,000 a day. So that's the reason why so many times when I'm talking to somebody or at a conference and I'm doing a breakout, I'm just like, look, this is how we outpace your team with simplicity. You just got to break it down into very palatable ways of looking at the schedule, scheduling the schedule, and kind of understanding the flow of what the doctor has to do in order to get that done.
Yeah. I think your point is very valid. I go through phases where I write a lot for dental economics. And one thing I wrote about, so we're in Charlotte, North Carolina. I went to the University of North Carolina for undergrad and dental school. So we're big basketball people.
Oh, yeah.
So Dean Smith, Michael Jordan, kind of the whole deal.
Yep.
I wrote about something in dental economics a long time ago about Jordan and Dean. And in one of Jordan's books, he talked about that Dean Smith was the only person, people said Dean Smith was the only person who could hold Michael Jordan under 20 points a game. And Jordan was like, well, actually, that's not true because I average over 20 points a game, my junior year. But he said, what Dean Smith taught me is how to average 32 points a game. And you break it down into, you're not trying to score in bunches. You got 4 quarters, you're trying to score 8 points a quarter. Can anybody score 8 points a quarter? Yeah, that's 32 points a game, easy. I attribute dentistry to the same thing. If you want to produce X per month and you have 16 days, you just break the blocks down. It's $4,000 a day, $6,000 a day, $7,000, whatever it is. And you start thinking about hitting singles and not trying to do full mouth reconstructions and 5 aligners or things like that. Just hit all the singles. The doubles and the triples that get mixed in there are kind of the things that push you over the top. Is that kind of your philosophy in
100%.
this?
Yeah, 100%. Because we are consistently I was looking at the schedule yesterday of the next 2 or 3 weeks. Every single day is at $12,000 or above. Every single day, and it's already booked a goal, and we have openings. So now, like you were saying, it's like if you can do that on bread and butter dentistry, just crown and bridge dentistry, then if you're doing an implant or you're doing an aligner case or you're doing a full mouth rehab, then that just makes it easier to hit your goal. But you can still do it on just basic stuff.
So when you're looking at the 3-day work week, are you trying to compress down, the 5 days into 3 days, or are you decoupling hygiene from doctor hours completely? Or kind of what's the 30-second operational blueprint on that?
Sure. So we've got to figure out where you want to be. If it doesn't make sense for you to hit that goal in 3 days, then maybe we need to reevaluate where you want to be, right? Or if that's truly what you want, if you want to work 3 days a week, or you just got to be able to do higher value procedures. That's where it really comes down to what the doctor truly wants. So if you want to be able to be a $3 million a year dentist, then you're going to have to do larger cases. You can't do that on bread and butter dentistry on 3 days a week, period. It's just impossible. I would say I've never seen anybody be able to do it. And just from how many times I've put together schedules, I've never been able to justify that number because you'd have to be producing $30,000, $40,000 a day. And that just doesn't make sense from a patient care standpoint either. I mean, if you want to be able to do more, let's say, what are your goals? For instance, let's just break it down. What are your goals? We do about 1.6 a year. Is what we do on 4 days. My goal ultimately, I'd love to be at 2 million. And I think, I'm a 55-year-old dentist. I'm gonna burn it, but so long. So I don't run around crazy by any means. I work one column with kind of an overflow column, like what you're talking about, with kind of assisted procedures, Invisalign, things like that. So that's kind of what I do right now. Okay, but you could easily be a $2 million dentist on 3 days a week. So when you break it down, let's just say you have, how many weeks do you want to take off this year?
4 or 5. Yeah.
Okay. So great. So we have 52 weeks. Let's take out 5 weeks. That's 47 weeks. Okay.
I don't think I've ever taken 5 weeks, but I would like to.
Hey, let's do it. I'm going to break this down for you right now. I think this is a great episode. This is going to be fun. Okay. So that's 42 weeks or 47 weeks, right? So that's 42,000 a week, 42,500 a week that we have to do divided by 4. That's $10,638 a day that you have to collect in order to be a $2 million dentist. Okay. Do you take a lot of insurance?
We're fee for service.
Even better.
Yeah.
This is very simple then, right? Okay. So again, you have 2 hygienists, right?
Yep.
So $3,000 a day conservatively. So all you have to produce is $7,600 a day to be a $2 million dentist.
Yep. And
with 5 weeks off.
Yeah. And that's probably, I look at kind of what we average. We're probably averaging close to the, so let's say we work 16 days a week, we're averaging about $135,000 a month is kind of where we are right now. Mm-hmm. So that breaks down to roughly about $8,000, $8,500 a day.
Correct.
So we need to kind of bridge that $1,500, $2,000 gap by more efficient scheduling or what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So more efficient scheduling or by sprinkling in a few more aligner cases.
Sure. Well, that's the golden goose. If you can sprinkle in more aligner cases and because that's kind of the high revenue, low time, that's all kind of assisted time. I think is the greatest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. How much are your aligner cases?
5,500.
How many cases do you average a month, roughly?
Aligner cases?
Starts. Yeah. Or like a year, let's say. Like how many did you do last year?
I mean, our goal is to have 5 aligner cases. We're probably doing closer to 2.
Right.
Mainly because we need to be better at educating and informing patients of that. Yeah.
Yes. Right. So that's what I would look at first is the education piece, because this is something that I've really started shifting my focus with my clients on is if we can look at our practices not as dental practices, but as an education platform, then things start to get real fun, because at the end of the day, if we can't educate our patients well enough to make informed decisions on their health, also on making sure they're there on time and, studious, and then making sure that they're paying their bills, then the dentistry doesn't work. Like it's just not going to happen. So if we can get better at the education piece with our whole team and get just better as educators in general, then things start flowing a lot smoother throughout the schedule, throughout the practice. The patient culture is better. The team culture is better. You have less turnover. And with the aligner cases, like really realistically, in order to bridge that $400,000 gap that you have right now, all you'd have to do is 6 starts a month. That's it.
Yeah, that'd be hitting our goal, which really just getting past our goal, which we're not doing. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that would be the first place I would look.
Sure.
Based off of just real world experience right there.
Interestingly enough, talking about reducing time and all that sort of stuff, COVID changed everybody's approach to dentistry. The one thing we really did is my staff did not want to leave, go to lunch, come back, change scrubs, all that sort of stuff that was kind of going on when the world was ending. So we went to an 8 to 3 schedule. We don't take lunch. We just bang it out 8 to 3. And, one day we're 7:30 to 3:30. And that's it. What we found is we became more productive, and we were working basically an hour less. So for me, we were also, compensation was dropping a little bit, production was going up, collections were going up, and people ask, well, how did you do that? And I was like, well, I think it frees up the schedule a little bit, because now you don't have to necessarily work on block scheduling. You can put a big case anywhere. You're not limited by lunch. And I also feel like practices ramp down 30 minutes before lunch and take time to kind of get back after lunch. And I think you lost a lot of time. So I think that is something that really has helped us. And it's also helped with employee retention. People want to be out of there. They don't want to be out of there at 5 o'clock, get home at 6 o'clock, then got to work out and things like that. You walk out at 3:30, you got several hours of the day. Do you have clients that you advise to do that, or do you kind of keep them on the big schedule?
It really depends on what they want to do. Again, right? So everything that I do is very customized based off of what they want to do. Now, I'll suggest things like that, and I have clients that do that where they work through lunch, but it really still comes down to their mindset and their limiting beliefs on whether or not they think they can do that, whether they think their team can do that, which is now to a leadership issue, right? And or fear of whether or not they can do it. But I mean, I've seen it work really well with clients and also just ourselves. But even in our practice, we technically our office is open 3.5 days a week. My wife doesn't work the half day because we don't have to see those patients on a Thursday if they've had an exam within the last 12 months.
Okay.
Right. And the way you do that is, hygiene, everybody's there. And we know it's a slower day and that's fine. But if they do find something, they'll take a picture, they'll take an x-ray, and then they'll send it to my wife, or they'll come in later for my wife to do the exam. But that there's probably, 200 patients in your practice right now that are pretty good. Like they rarely have work.
Sure.
They're pretty clean. Like it's fine. So it's those patients right there that you flip-flop between the week, Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday. So that way we get an exam during the week once a year. We'll, just do a cleaning on a Thursday when that's there. But everybody else is just like, okay, cool. How can we get that? And we even have a lunch. We do. We work 8:30 to 4:30 with an hour lunch. But I do agree with you that you do see a drop in productivity in the afternoon because it does take time to ramp back up, right? Versus if you're in it, you're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like that's what I do every day. Even with I work from home, obviously, but I still manage the practice. And when you have the systems as streamlined as we do, my wife can just manage the people, and the systems are self-accountable to keep people in line and perform really well still, to where I was only in the practice one time all last year.
Oh, wow.
So it's just like, okay, can we get things to where they're a well-oiled machine and super efficient, to where I don't have to be there and I can just manage it remotely. So that way, okay, cool. Yeah. My analytics, my numbers are in line. It's like, I don't need to micromanage people. It's like, there's no reason to, but we tend to do that when like there's one patient that just everything went wrong with, and then we blow up a whole system just because of that margin of error.
Sure.
But there's a margin of error because we're never going to be perfect.
So one thing I was going to drop back to, you talked about hygiene check should be no more than 5 minutes. But then we also talk about educating patients and providing more education to allow acceptance of cases and acceptance of Invisalign. How do you manage having a 5-minute hygiene check and providing the education? We're kind of a boutique practice, so we have 1 hour hygiene visits, and kind of what I've always prided myself on is spending time with the patient.
For sure.
And that's kind of what makes our practice grow. How do you address that?
Sure. So I would say I don't want to change that for you, right? But I would rather you spend 4 minutes doing that, where you're spending time with the patient and getting very good at building that rapport quickly and quicker after you do your exam, where the hygienist has already done the education piece, because you can do education without diagnosing. So for instance, if there's a gap between two teeth, like say, number 2 is missing or number 3 is missing, then all you have to do is, from the hygiene perspective, they understand what things are. They're clinically trained. It's like, hey, have you ever thought about, having something here because like it can cause whatever, do you know your options for replacing that space there? Oh no. Well, let me tell you, there's the more expensive way, there's the cheaper way, and the middle of the way. So you could do an implant, which obviously is the best option. Do you want me to go further into how to explain what an implant is?
Sure.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. So they're doing the bulk of the education piece without diagnosing. Then they come to you then when they're ready for the exam, like, hey, we discussed this space. We talked about this crack on number 15 that has a large amalgam in it. And, we talked about how it potentially needs a crown, but the doc will go over that and make sure everything's good and whatnot. So where you come in, she's already gone over, he's already gone over.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, so all you have to do is like, hey, this large amalgam, like I agree, that's going to be a crown. Like, we need to make sure we get that secured and, give you longevity there. And, based off of your knowledge of, the implant versus the partial or the bridge, like, what would be best for you? Oh, well, I would much rather do the implant. And we're like, okay, cool. So, Donna in the front will be able to get you that estimate, to be able to get you that. Let's get you scheduled for that crown. But is there any other questions you have for me? Oh, no. Okay, great. The last thing you need to ask, though, or say is the urgency piece. I look forward to seeing you soon for that crown. And, like we'll typically like touch them on the knee or whatever, or touch them on the shoulder. It's like, hey, I look forward to seeing you soon for that crown, and you walk out.
Sure.
And then the hygienist does the exact same thing when they take the patient to the front and hands them off to the front for the estimate.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the handoff, and literally where, we see drop-offs all the time at the handoff. Where does the ball get dropped? Kind of how do you educate teams and clients to make sure that the ball doesn't get dropped, and what is your process for the handoff? So
I would say simplicity is key. I mean, that's right. That's what we're talking about. Sure. Simplified dentistry, right? And, when me and you were on that panel at PodFest 2 years ago, I was like, oh man, he's already got it. Like that, he's a simplified dentistry, right? Because that's everything that I do. Just like Michael Jordan, just like Kobe Bryant, like you've got to go back to the basics and simplify. That's the key, right? Like you were saying too, it's like break it down into quarters. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, right? So when I suggest things in verbiage, for instance, it's got to be simple and it's got to be very palatable and easy to implement. So like I just told you, when you're at the end of the appointment, you can go through and say things like right before you say, I look forward to seeing you soon for that crown. You're talking about the implant, right? So you're like, hey, let's get this implant, scheduled for you. Is there anything besides finances that would prevent you from moving forward with this treatment? And what am I doing with that question? I'm getting rid of every objection except the financial one. Is there anything besides finances that would prevent you from moving forward with this treatment? No? Okay, great. So if we figure out the finances, you're good with moving forward. Yes. Great. I look forward to seeing you soon for that implant. And you walk out.
Yeah. We had a podcast a while back, and one of our guests talked about, a system where basically, before you walk out, you're like, hey, I need to see you in the next 3 weeks for a crown on number 30, and it's going to take us 2 hours. So we'll see you back for that. And you hope that the hygienist translates that same language, and the patient is educated enough to walk up to the front desk and say, hey, he wants to see me in 3 weeks for a crown on number 30. It takes 2 hours.
Yeah. It's the same thing, right? So now you hand it off to the hygienist, right? So the hygienist is bringing it back up to the front. But you've got to work with your whole team. So we have monthly meetings where we work on one thing for the whole month. And one of those is handoffs, right? So we can say all day that, oh yeah, I did that. But did you, right? So you have to role play. It's so difficult, and I know it's so awkward to role play, but it is very important when you're trying to overcome objections, when you're trying to hand off. But the same thing that you said needs to come out of the hygienist's mouth. So when the hygienist, you've handed it back to the hygienist, they're taking them up to the front. It's like, hey, Miss Donna is going to take great care of you. So we always talk up providers. So this is a system, right? So the first thing you do is you talk up the next person that you're handing off to. Hey, Miss Donna's going to take great care of you. She's going to get you the estimate and figure out your schedule. I look forward to seeing you soon for that implant. Walk away. So there's kind of a 3-part series, right? So it's, this person's going to take great care of you. That's the first thing, because you want to set the bar high. This is what they're going to do. So that way the patient understands what's about to happen. So it's fear of the unknown. You take the unknown out. And I look forward to seeing you soon for whatever you talked about. The assistant's going to do the same thing. So if an emergency comes in, needs an extraction, they're doing the same thing to the front. Hey, Miss Donna's going to take great care of you. She's going to get you that estimate for that extraction. I look forward to seeing you soon for it. And then they walk back. And it sounds robotic at first because you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. But after a while, they start putting their own personality and spin into it. But that's kind of the system, right? They've got to be able to.
That's kind of in the team empowerment kind of direction.
Yeah, giving them the responsibility.
Yeah. So kind of along the lines, team empowerment, building your team, letting your team be professionals. That's what we tell them all the time. I hire professionals and I expect them to be professionals. Now, we have to educate them. We have to train them. We have to build them up. And that's how you empower your team. Let's talk about morning huddles. I've been in some of the worst morning huddles you've ever had. In fact, we almost never have morning huddles anymore because I have a very experienced team, but I feel like I'm missing on things. Kind of what's your advice on morning huddles?
Oh, man. We live and die by our morning huddle.
But how does it become something where you're just not, hey, Jane's coming in, she's whatever,
it can't be a meeting for another meeting. It can't be another meeting for another meeting. And this is where I push back with a lot of people. So when I am working on the morning huddle, I ask everybody to get there 15 minutes before it, because most of the time the morning huddle is just going through the schedule because nobody's prepared. Okay. Even if it's preparing the night before, that's fine, or the day before, we need to make sure that everybody's prepared. So the front, what they're doing when they come in the morning, they're clearing off the schedule from any texts and or voicemails from the night prior. So that way the schedule is clean. Then the hygienists are going through, what is due today? What is the doctor walking into? So that way I can relay that during the morning huddle. And who is due with unscheduled treatment? Like if they have unscheduled treatment on their side in hygiene, like that's something they need to know. So they can potentially bring that to the morning huddle as well. But here's kind of the secret sauce. So when you get in there, the doctor and the assistant also have a huddle before the huddle. So my wife and the assistants will get together and they'll go through their schedule and they'll ask three main things. What are we doing today? Is there any unscheduled treatment in the same quadrant or on the same side that we can maximize that appointment? And then what is the next phase or the next appointment they need scheduled? They do that for every single patient on their side. And the assistant brings that information, not the doctor. So they're writing down, okay, what are we doing? How can we maximize it? And what's next? Whether it's hygiene visit or the next phase of treatment, maybe that treatment's on the other side. So we're going to be doing that on the next phase, on the next appointment. So when you come to the morning huddle, you have a clean schedule. And then the goal is for everybody to bring their expertise and what they just prepared to maximize the schedule, not just go over the schedule. So typically what we'll do is just go through hygiene, right? Just like everybody else. But when you're going through hygiene, you're not just like, oh, okay, yeah, so-and-so's due for this. We're doing x-rays. We're doing this. Move on to the next person. It's like, no, okay. You get to the person that has unscheduled treatment or has whatever, and then you go over that. Let's say Mr. John at 9 o'clock has unscheduled fillings that he's needed to, be done. And we had a filling appointment that fell off. We're going to bring that to the morning huddle and be like, hey, the front, you need to give him an estimate and call him before he comes in. So that way he knows at 9 o'clock, we have the opportunity, not a cancellation. We have an opportunity to do his fillings at the exact same time after his cleaning. Sure. See if he's okay with that. So that way we can maximize the schedule if anything has fallen apart. Same thing, if there are holes in hygiene, there are bound to be people on the doctor side that are due for hygiene. So let's say at 2 o'clock, we have a filling patient. They're done with their fillings and we have a 3 o'clock hygiene visit that just opened up. Let's ask John over here, who's getting the fillings, if he wants to go ahead and get his cleaning done, knock it all out in one afternoon because he already took off work. Let's make sure he can just get it in and get it done. So the goal is to get the schedule maximized and up to goal or above goal. So that way we can get things going throughout the day.
Kind of as we wrap up, kind of want to run into just a few kind of more rapid questions.
Sure.
We're talking about team building, team empowerment. Hiring is key. I think hiring clinical people, you understand kind of what goes into it. Hiring non-clinical people, we tend to look at experience. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. What's the number one red flag you see on a resume for hiring a non-clinical person?
Well, number one, I don't hire for experience.
There you go.
I hire for skill or for personality.
Okay.
So hospitality is always a good one. I know you asked for a red flag, but
let's go to the green flags.
Yeah, I mean, I look for hospitality, servers, anything like a hotel, anything like that, because customer service is 100% the make or break in a practice. And your front office, you can train them on skill and on the nuance of dental, but you can't train them on personality and hospitality. It's very difficult. So I always hire for personality, not skill. Same with, honestly, clinical. Sometimes they're new, but they're green, and I don't have to untrain people. But as far as your question, what are the red flags? If they can't pay attention to detail, so when I put up an ad or something on Facebook saying, hey, we're looking for somebody, email me your resume. If they can't email me their resume, that's attention to detail. Okay? If they're going around and whatnot, they didn't read. And a lot of times too, what I'll do is in that post, I'll put, make sure you email us your resume and put, we're happy to work here in the subject line.
Sure.
So that way they understand like attention to detail.
Yeah.
Because that's an automatic red flag. They're going to the bottom of the list.
It's pretty interesting. Kind of when you start talking about, taking a practice that's a $500,000 practice to $1 million practice, kind of what's the hardest thing that you find for a dentist to let go to get to there?
Leadership. I know you said let go, but like if you're under $1 million, that's a leadership issue.
So you're saying you have to bring in other leaders or you have to improve your leadership?
Both.
Okay.
So if you can improve yourself, your team will improve in general. But if you have a problem reining in your team and not leading them properly, I ask you to have a meeting and I tell you to say this exactly. I'm sorry, I haven't been the leader that you need from me. But moving forward, I'm going to start holding myself accountable and holding you accountable to be the leader you need moving forward. So by apologizing, you're taking ownership for the lack of leadership. And now you can start holding people accountable. And it's not a brick wall of like, where did this come from? We've never done this before. And you've never held me to this standard before. So it's a lot easier. But I would say below $1 million, it's all about leadership.
If you could track one KPI for the next 90 days, what would it be and why?
Treatment dollar acceptance percentage. Yeah. So treatment acceptance in general, like the percentage, is if 10 patients come in and you present treatment and 8 patients schedule the first phase of treatment, then that's 80%. Okay. That's 80% treatment acceptance percentage. The dollars, though, are equally important. So if you have a low dollar amount that they're accepting, then they're just like accepting the fillings and stuff. They're not accepting the higher end procedures. That's equally as important. So the treatment dollar acceptance percentage is super important to understand and track, because that tells you if education is waning, if it's not actually doing what you're supposed to, if you need to increase that, and then also figuring out the finances on the back end. So do we need to do payment plans? Do we need to do third-party financing, whatever? So if you can, the average is 25% across the US of the treatment dollar acceptance percentage, but my wife has an 86% treatment dollar acceptance percentage. So if she presents $100,000 worth of treatment, 86,000 of it gets scheduled.
Building a great team. Everybody's looking for different things these days. What do you think is the one thing that team members are looking for the most right now?
I'm going to start with saying you've got to find missionaries, not mercenaries. And what I mean by that is a mercenary is just there for a paycheck.
Sure.
And as soon as they get a $1 an hour raise, right. And if they get a $1 an hour raise right down the street, they're hopping, right? So I look for missionaries that are there for the culture that are there for the mission of the practice, what you're wanting to do, the vision of where they're going. Because if they can hit their goals, their personal goals at your practice, they're going to stay. So I would say that's the biggest thing for team members. You need to sell your vision in the interview of where you're going and what you want to do. So that way you can ask them, hey, what are your personal goals? Well, I would love to make $70,000 a year or $80,000 a year and be able to buy a house for me and my family. I'm like, okay, great. I know my vision, so I know you can do that here. So if you can figure that out, that's the biggest thing to keep people there and keep people loyal.
I didn't get to touch on the music aspect. How did you get into the music aspect and then take music and the things that you've learned from music into dentistry?
Yeah, so obviously, like I was a musician, touring musician, toured the world. It was a lot of fun, and then also managed artists and produced for big artists, and for a long time. And then my wife, when she was 18 months out of clinical or out of dental school, she was like, hey, I got to buy a practice. Like I want to do it my own way, be able to pay off my student loans faster. I was like, okay. But she was just like, will you help me? I was like, sure. So I moved back from music a lot, but the way that I approach dental is very out of the box, right? Because I didn't come from dental in general. And I look at things through a very unique lens of like, well, why do we do it this way? Right? Do you know the like cutting off the end of the ham story?
I don't.
It's like, why do we cut off the end of the ham? So this little girl is coming to her mom at Thanksgiving. Is like, why do you cut off the end of the ham every time that we cook ham? Like, I don't know. We've just always done it that way. Like, why don't you go ask your grandma? Hey, grandma, why do we cut off the end of the ham? Like, I don't know. We've always done it that way. Why don't you go see your grandma? Okay, cool. So, hey, great grandma, why do we cut off the end of the ham? Well, Jane, back in the day, our ovens were a lot smaller and our pans were a lot smaller. The ham wouldn't fit in the pan. So we had to cut off the end of the ham in order to put it into the pan. So that way we could cook it in the smaller oven. Like, oh, so we're just cutting off the end of the ham
for no reason
because that's what we've always done. Right. So I look at dentistry through that lens of like, why are we doing it this way? And kind of like a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, just like, why? Why are we doing it this way? And is there a different way that could be even more successful and better for our team? That's why I push the mold with 3 days a week. That's why I push the mold with marketing. That's why I push the mold with pretty much everything that we do. And it's been very successful.
And, touring musician, toured around the world. What capacity? What were you doing?
Sure. So I was a drummer in the last band I was in. We toured through Europe. We toured coast to coast. And did a lot of singing as well. But yeah, I mean, I was a guitarist as well. I know I have the guitar.
Sure, yeah, I see the guitars, yeah.
I was a guitarist for a long time. I still am, but but the last band I was in, I was the drummer.
Kirk, for doctors, our listeners that appreciate what you're saying as much as I do, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, of course. So you can hit me up on Instagram at Kirk Teachout or Facebook. That's fine. You can also email me, Kirk at ivquartercoaching.com. So fourth quarter coaching. Or just hit up my website, ivquartercoaching.com.
And, obviously with us being Simplified Dentistry, as we talked about when we first met, what's your advice to docs whose goal is to simplify dentistry? It
get out of your head. It really doesn't have to be as complex as you think it is and as complicated as it is. Just figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it, and then just figure out a way to look at the basics and simplify everything that you're doing. It doesn't have to be crazy.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. We really appreciate having you. Hope everybody has enjoyed this as much as I have. Please check out Kirk at Fourth Quarter Coaching and reach out to him on Instagram, Facebook. Thanks again for being a part of this, and we look forward to catching up again soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks.